John is with us in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hey, John, welcome to the EntreLeadership Podcast.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
Better than I deserve. What's up?
Good. So I have a question. I am currently the third generation in a residential construction company. We do about $4 to $5 million a year top line with 22 employees. My aunt and my mom are the owners currently. My aunt is about the CFO, and my dad runs the business for the most part as the CEO. And my wife and I are trying to be more active in the business. She's a designer. We do in-house home designs, and I am the project manager who runs all the jobs and hires the trades and everything like that. So looking forward, my aunt wants to retire in about 3 to 5 years. We haven't had that conversation, and my dad plans to retire in about 10. I'm just trying to be looking forward, and I started having meetings with my aunt and my dad last year before my wife graduated from college with her second degree, and so we were talking about 5-year plans and what things look like, and there's some, because of aging trades and we self-perform a lot of our work, we have some major problems coming up that kind of need to be fixed in order for my wife and I to feel comfortable making the large purchase of the business. And I was wondering how you would handle some of the family dynamics of my aunt not necessarily wanting to take my wife and I's thoughts into consideration, even though, we might be planning out to where we are going to own the business at the time frame of the plan, if that makes sense. And then at the same time, there's two different entities, an LLC and a corporation, and how we would go about navigating the legal process of evaluation and moving those entities over towards us one day as we purchase the business, if that makes sense.
How old are you?
I am 23 and my wife's 24.
And how old is your dad?
He's 30 years older than me, so he's 53. And my aunt is a couple years older than him.
Okay. And so they have a 10-year timeline for this to occur?
My dad does. He would be okay with co-owning the business with me.
He doesn't own it. Your mom owns it, right?
Right. So my mom would be okay with co-owning it with me, and then he would run it with me, kind of like you and your son do. Anyhow. But my aunt has no interest in owning it with me and my wife, so it'd be my dad would buy her out, and then we would buy. Your aunt
has no interest in what?
My aunt is not interested in running or owning the business with us. So it's not
but she's going to be gone in 3 years, you said.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
3 to 5.
When she leaves, is the plan for you to buy her out?
No, because she won't sell to me. So it's kind of convoluted. It's like
she won't sell to you.
Yeah, it's like my parents have to buy from her because she doesn't want to do. She doesn't want the business to be between me and her. Essentially, she doesn't want to do business between family other than what she's already done with that partnership, if that makes sense. And so this is kind of the problems we've been running into is.
Okay, so is there a plan on the table for your dad to buy her out?
Not necessarily. So
why?
So they have a buy-sell agreement,
if she dies, but what about when she retires and wants to sell to him?
Right. Well, so they haven't really thought that far through, and that's kind of the problem. And she's kind of conflict avoidant. So when we go to, and she doesn't like change. So when we bring it up, it kind of doesn't compute. So I was trying to figure out.
So what is the dynamic with her and your dad? Because really, this is your dad's problem. It's not your problem.
Right.
And no, they don't need to take your input. You're 23. You need to put your head down, do your work. Your dad does need to go get this done, though. And before you buy it from your dad, if there's some problems you want to fix, over the next 5 to 7 years, I'm okay with taking your input on that.
Mm-hmm.
But at this stage of the game, she's made it real clear. She doesn't going to sell to you. She doesn't want to deal with the dynamic of you. She's going to sell to your dad. Only she's not put together the plan is all. Right?
Yeah. So the hard part is my dad takes my input and asks for it, and my wife, and then my aunt has no interest in it. So that's kind of
Well, who runs the
where-
business? Your dad. He's the CEO.
that's correct.
And particularly he runs the business when she's gone and he's bought it from her.
That's also correct. Yeah.
So all of that solves itself once your dad gets the purchase done from her. In the meantime, you have one outlet for your input, and that's your dad, because she's not going to listen. And she's not
Okay.
going to sell to you. She's made all that real plain. I think that ship sailed, dude.
So just keep your head down and just work with my dad. then,
Exactly.
And
tell your
don't
dad
even
to get
think about it.
get the dadgum plan together with her and lay it all out. And then as soon as that's underway, start working your plan with your dad.
Okay. So then for my plan with my dad then, so like when they bought the business from my grandparents, they formed an LLC to purchase the land. And then with the land, they then charged the corporation rent each year, and then part of that paid for the corporation kind of deal.
Yeah. The real estate's separate from the business.
Okay. So now my aunt, well, my mom and my aunt own the LLC, and there's cash and property and outside assets that then got handed down from my grandparents in that LLC. Would you recommend that me and my wife just form our own? Then when we go to purchase it from my parents, does that make sense?
Well, there's two separate transactions. There's this transaction where you're buying the business from the corporate and you're buying the corporate stock.
Yep.
That's the important transaction.
Okay.
You can operate the business anywhere. It doesn't have to be on that land. You could go rent a building somewhere else.
Okay.
It's not mandatory that you're on their site to operate the business.
We kind of have a facility, like we build walls in a shop before they go. We prefab some of the homes before they go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you need a warehouse.
Yeah, I guess we could just build another one.
No, you don't have to build another one. You go rent one. You don't have to be in the real estate business to be in business.
Well, I don't think you could rent
a warehouse.
It's not just a warehouse. It's like got tables and everything to build the walls by hand and everything, and like cranes and other stuff like that. Like
it's called a manufacturing facility in a warehouse. Yeah.
I guess we'd have to make the manufacturing parts, and we could rent the warehouse, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You'd install the equipment in the warehouse and have a plant. You've got a plant to build stuff. I mean, hopefully you can work something out on the real estate, but they're two different transactions.
Okay.
It's very important for the family and for you to separate the transactions.
Okay. So here's a question then for the valuation of the business, or the valuation. So basically, I've heard you recommend that you kind of consider the last 4 to 5 years of income, the average of that, and then multiply it by 4, and then that's kind of the purchase price. Am I correct in saying that?
Net profit after all players have been paid a salary.
Right. Okay. So my question is then, the LLC charges rent to the corporation.
That's just the rent. That's an expense of the business, and that lowers the profit. It's a separate thing. That's the thing. You guys have got this so convoluted in your head that you think the real estate is inextricably tied to the business. It's not. The business is simply a tenant. The tenant pays rent. If you're buying a restaurant and you pay a landlord rent, it's a line item in your expenses. It affects your profit, obviously, the higher your rent.
Right.
And so is the rent market rent? Is it a good deal?
Well, so no, it's not market rent really, because of
lower or higher?
Managing purposes, higher. Yeah, they charge themselves more.
They charge too much. So you don't want to be their tenant then if you buy the business, because you don't want to pay more than market rent.
The LLC we would adjust the rate at that point to be.
Who's we? You don't own the LLC at this point. You just bought the business. I'm trying to explain to you. They're two separate things.
Yeah. So, but who I would be buying the business from would be, how I see it is it'd be part of the purchase agreement of the corporation, because you're dealing with the same person. Does that make sense?
No.
So
it doesn't make sense. It can be, but it is not a requirement to buy this business that you do a deal with this landlord. You could buy the business and move it.
But
if you're going to buy the business and stay, you would want to sign a lease with the landlord that is a reasonable term on the lease. And in addition to that, because it's also family, it'd be nice to have an option to purchase that LLC or purchase that piece of real estate from the LLC later as you've got some more money. But the first thing you need to do is get the business in your name. The second thing is move from being a tenant to being the owner of the building. You do not have to buy the building to buy the business. Period. It's not required structurally. Now, they may want to sell it to you, but they're two different transactions. They're two different assets. The real estate has a market value of this manufacturing plant that your family has built, and the business has a market value. They are two different things. And if you try to tie them in together, you're going to mess this up, because that's how they end up paying each other too much rent, getting all this convoluted crap. And no, you don't sign a deal where you overpay on the rent. You don't sign a deal where you overpay for employees. You don't sign a deal where you overpay for anything. You sign a deal based on market value on all of these transactions, and then that'll get you there. But that's the deal you're going to have to work with your dad. And your dad's going to have to decide how to buy your aunt out, and he's going to have to figure out how to split this LLC separate from the business that is a corporation. This is the EntreLeadership Podcast. I'm Dave Ramsey.